before we build software, we need to know what are the requirements, what are the features, and the most important thing is that we want to ensure that the piece of software meets the client needs. So requirement engineering plays an important role as part of the software engineering process. Today, we're gonna do an interview with Sumaya Suba. Okay, yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Sumaya Zubair. I'm the Associate Director for Product Management here at Monash University in a particular department of eSolutions. I started my career as a business analyst more than 15 years ago. So I could not agree with you more about the importance of requirements engineering and the fact that solid, appropriate, and accurate requirements establish the foundations of a successful project.
Yes, exactly.
Requirement engineering has evolved over the last 15 years as many organizations have embraced Agile as a delivery methodology, but the key principles are still the same. And as part of my career, as I moved away from business analysis into product management, those key principles continue to resonate. We don't necessarily have dedicated business analysts in all of our projects here in the university. Sometimes product managers have to play that role, but the importance of listening to the stakeholders, the importance of the why, stakeholders will say, we need a new page to do X and Y, but the importance of asking, why do you need to do X and Y? What is your end goal? What is your objective is still important. Understanding the process, the business process that is currently in place, we call it the as-is state, and where the intended future process needs to go into is absolutely important. It was 15 years ago. We used to do very extensive process mapping activities, BPMN and so forth. We don't do that to that level for everything. It's more case by case, but understanding the process, the as is and the to be is important as a business analyst. That helps make sure that we're defining the right user stories, that we're making sure all the features that need to make part of the backbone of a particular product or enhancement is considered properly. If we're going to deliver something in phases, we need to understand how the process will change in phases. And that helps with change management as well, because that, again, is an important part. It's sort of a very important partnership that I've seen over the years between the business analyst that plays that key role for requirements to partner with the change manager to make sure that the end users that will be impacted are aware from the get-go what we're changing, why we're changing, and what the new world will be like.
Oh, okay, I see. And maybe next we can talk about the process, requirement engineering process, right? Yeah. What are the steps that you need to do to effectively elicit the requirement? Yeah.
So one of the key first steps really is to understand who your stakeholders are.
Okay.
What are your primary stakeholders, the ones that are obviously the sponsors of your initiative or change that you're wanting to implement. Your primary other stakeholders are the ones that are going to be impacted day to day with the change. Then you've got your secondary or supporting stakeholders that may have a not a direct impact of their day-to-day job, but maybe something that impacts them, once a month or once a year, that kind of thing.
I see.
Those stakeholder groups need to be engaged with from the get-go. And so stakeholder analysis is an important activity. Following on from that is the requirements gathering sessions that need to be scheduled. You need to, either in a group setting, like a workshop, or one-on-one catch-ups with relevant stakeholder groups, understand the why. So what are we currently doing? Where do we want to get to? And what are the various steps that need to be done to get to that step? Now, requirements have a lot of different flavors. There's different types of requirements. You've got functional, non-functional requirements. The important thing really is to make sure that you start with the why. And from there, you make sure you cover all your bases in terms of all your stakeholder groups. People come with very different perspectives and drivers. You've got to take them on a journey. Here at the university, we've had, it's always been interesting to take 10 faculties together on a change program. Every faculty operates processes in slightly different ways, and particularly when you do enterprise-wide changes like the Moodle 4.1 upgrade that's been recently done, and previously things like implementation of the e-assessment program, you've got to take all of the stakeholders on the journey. And you may not be able to address the needs or requirements of every stakeholder group from day one, but having an understanding of their drivers and their needs and being able to prioritize the delivery based on making sure that the majority stakeholders' not negotiable requirements are delivered as soon as possible with a clear plan, as in the remaining requirements that impact only 10 or 20% stakeholders but are still crucial for them are done at a later point in time with adequate workarounds if needed.
Okay.
So yeah, that's what I would
see.
say.
Cool.
In a
so
nutshell.
maybe, expand the, let's take the e-assessment platform as an example. How do you develop the epic, the vision, the goal, the user story? Can you give us some example?
Sure. So I can give you a bit of an example of a question type that was developed in the very early days for e-assessment. We called it the composite question type or the parent-child question type, where you have a bit of a case study. Many of students that have used the assessment platform would be familiar with it. You've got a bit of a case study, and then you've got questions like part A, part B, part C. Now, this is a new question type, was not available in the base platform, which is Moodle Quiz. We needed to understand what is the need of the question type. Like, why can't a normal essay question be used for this? There was obviously academics wanting to know that what did student answer in part A to be able to mark part B properly, because sometimes they answer partially in part A and the remaining, and they need to be given credit accurately. There needs to be the ability to mark individual sections with the ability to accumulate the marks. So we engaged with academics from a representative group of faculties to come up with the requirements. Back then, and this was a couple of years ago, I remember the School of Nursing and Medicine was a very big user of this particular question type. So we had very focused discussions with a couple of academics from that faculty, and we made sure that other faculties, like from the science and engineering area as well as humanities, were engaged to make sure that we're not just building a solution that's catered to one faculty's needs. We've got to make sure that we're providing the base solution that addresses the majority. And then when there are critical requirements for medicine or for engineering, those are catered to as well.
Okay.
So being able to mark individual question types that could then be accumulated was important. So that was the first kind of feature, I would say, that was identified. There was a few more in terms of supporting batch marking that was put down as another feature that could wait later, so it wasn't put down as a release one. There was also, after engaging with the other stakeholder that was important, that was students, their importance of highlighting questions and being able to make sure that whatever they've highlighted in the case study question, the parent text, is viewable to them when they're answering part A of that question and part B, because this was really important for the Faculty of Law, which has really big questions. So we made sure that that was there as part of the first phase as well, because that was a key requirement for that stakeholder group. Right. And as you know, the key stakeholders for any assessment platform is your academics that are creating and marking the assessments and the students that are taking the assessment. Okay. So we had to work with them to understand what is the not negotiable that would, has to be done in phase one. So that was the way we identified another feature. Then we had those wider engagements and understood what the scope of this wider piece can be, identified those features, but didn't go down to user stories from the get-go, because sometimes, as we've learned from experience, users don't know what their requirements are, what they need from a feature until they've got the base there. Yeah. They've got to use the technology to then go, you know what? This marking is really good, but I now need to be able to match mark, because I've got 500 plus students in my cohort. I need to be able to divide the marking so I can get it done in the deadlines that I have. And so we then put that down as a phase 2 feature, broke it down with the right faculty representation or stakeholder group representation, identified the user stories, and then prioritized and implemented.
Okay, I see. Thank you so much. Yeah, and once you come up with the user story, do you also estimate the story point or that kind of thing as well? So how do you do that? Yes.
So what I've seen happen in teams that I've been involved in is the business analyst plays a very important role in the initial phases of the story documentation. In a lot of initiatives, it's ideal for the business analyst to start with the story documentation after adequate stakeholder engagement, understanding the lay of the land from a business perspective and the priority and the criticality and how processes will be impacted. Once that's understood, it's best for them to work with a technical lead or an architect to sort of flesh out the technical aspects of a story. Once that's done and some basic documentation is done, we typically use the tool called Jira for this level of documentation with attachments like screenshots or a wireframe or something. At this stage, a UX designer, if they're available, is also engaged if a new screen needs to be designed or something. So the business analyst, the UX designer, and the technical lead work on fleshing out the user story, adding a little bit more detail. And once that detail is put as much as possible into the document and it's been endorsed with the product manager, we then take it to a refining or estimating session with the delivery squad. The delivery squad is then walked through with the details of the documented user story as it is known at a point in time, made sure that it's got all the details that the technical members of the team need to know. Any additional information they have to ask, they ask. We make sure the updates are made if needed. And then we do something called planning poker with the whole delivery team to be able to make sure that we're able to story point the story. Now, every delivery team has different sizing techniques, and we don't mandate that everyone's got to do, you use one for X number of hours. That's not appropriate. I remember for the e-assessment team, the lowest story point was considered 1, and the team had agreed that that was the effort for adding a new field to an already created form. So that was the kind of estimating kind of guideline that they used. That's 1 story points that, so 3 is double that effort. So that's how much, and that's what they would use. They would vote, and if there were some outliers, they'd have a discussion why there's an outlier. Why does someone think this is an 8 versus someone else thinking it's 8? And in other cases, then we'd look at, okay, do we need to do a re-estimating because of additional information we've just discussed, or no, this one outlier was a non-standard one. We all as a team agree this is a 5-story pointer. Let's put down 5. And from that point on, the story is completed from a documentation perspective.
I see.
And it's then in your backlog, ready to be picked up as and when prioritized with the product manager.
I see. That's good. So once we know how much effort is needed, and then developers can just take that backlog and then implement
as it's prioritized,
execute it. Okay, cool. And then probably this is the last question now. So as a BA role, what is the biggest challenge to be in a BA role?
I think particularly in this day and age, when I started my career as a business analyst a very long time ago, it was the norm to have 60, 70-page business requirements documents that you took.
There's a waterfall style.
A lot of documentation. That's how I started my career, and believe it or not, it would take up to 2-3 weeks to produce the document, get it peer reviewed, get it approved by the developer that's assigned to you and the QA engineer that's assigned to you before it could be considered complete to then be passed on to development. Now, if the business landscape changed in that time, you'll find out soon.
Exactly.
So you had a lot of time to do deep dive analysis, and perfection was really important back then. Whereas today, it's more about smart documentation, timely documentation.
Just enough documentation.
Just enough documentation. I really caution today's BAs from something we call analysis paralysis, because you can get too bogged down in the details. You need to ask the right questions, which is the why and what do you want to get to. Have some wireframes associated to be able to talk to. But there needs to be an ability to draw a line to get the work started, because there is no better way to get feedback than showing a developed screen with some functional aspects to the end user. Let them use it and then give you more accurate feedback. If you sit in a corner and keep developing this really complex form with no business feedback, you don't know if you're developing the right thing. So you've got to get that kind of that foundational piece sorted from an analysis perspective, put it out the door, let the business stakeholders test it out, and you keep working on the thing that you've identified as phase 2 and phase 3. And while they test it out and give you feedback, and you've got to be mindful that you will get feedback, the important thing is the BA working with the product manager to give that feedback, to prioritize the next releases. So smart documentation, avoid analysis paralysis, making sure that you're not an order taker. We're not supposed to just go implement what the business asks us to do. We've got to make sure that we're analyzing, asking the why, making sure the right solution is provided in a timely way. And if the business is asking for too much, it's up to us to say, let's break it down into phases. Let's do a phase 1, which is your not negotiable foundational activity. Let's get that out to you in release 1. We'll let you test it as we start working in parallel with phase 2, which is your kind of second level of priority activity. We do things like Moscow as well as
yeah,
you
Moscow.
may be discussing through your course. Again, what are your mandatories? What are your must-haves?
Yes.
And again, everything cannot be must-have.
Yeah.
That's a challenge that a lot of us experience.
Right. We cannot have everything
What's your
within one sprint.
must-have? Like yours, absolute. There's no point of the solution without this.
Yeah.
That needs to be identified to do the base solution and to push it out the door before the next level of priority can be looked at.
I see. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, I think we are pretty much asked every questions now. Yep. So thank you so much for your time.
That's all right. My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.